The psychology of people who disappear when life gets hard. Some people do not disappear because they do not care. They disappear because being seen while struggling feels unbearable. They do not always leave because they are cold. They do not always go silent because they want to hurt anyone. They do not always stop replying because the connection means nothing to them. Sometimes they disappear because life has become too heavy to explain. They look normal from the outside. They may still go to work. They may still post something online. They may still answer simple questions with, "I'm fine." But inside, something is shut down. And when people ask, "Where have you been?" they do not know how to answer because the truth feels too messy. They do not want to say, "I have been overwhelmed. I have been scared. I have not known how to keep going. I have been trying to survive quietly. I did not have the energy to be a person for anyone else." So instead of explaining, they disappear. Not because they do not love people, but because they do not know how to be loved when they are not okay. For some people, being seen while struggling feels more painful than struggling alone. They can handle pain in private. They can cry in the shower. They can sit in a dark room. They can overthink at 2 a.m. They can carry the weight silently. But letting someone see that weight, that feels dangerous. Because somewhere in their life, they learned that pain made them a burden. Maybe when they were young, their emotions were too much for the people around them. Maybe they were told to stop crying. Maybe they were called dramatic. Maybe they were ignored when they needed comfort. Maybe they had to be strong before they were ready. So they learned something without realizing it. When I am struggling, I should hide. They learned to become quiet when they were hurting. They learned to disappear before anyone could reject them. They learned to handle things alone because asking for help once felt humiliating. And now, even as adults, their nervous system still follows that old rule. When life becomes hard, they do not reach out. They retreat. They cancel plans. They leave messages unread. They avoid calls. They tell themselves they will reply later. Then later becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes a week. A week becomes guilt. And guilt becomes even more silence. This is why disappearing can become a cycle. At first, they disappear because they are overwhelmed. Then they stay gone because they feel ashamed. They think, "I waited too long to reply. They probably hate me now. I do not know how to explain myself. I made everything awkward. I should just stay away." So the silence grows, not because they want a distance, but because they do not know how to return. And sometimes people misunderstand this. They call it ghosting. They call it selfishness. They call it not caring. And yes, silence can hurt people. Disappearing can confuse people. Not communicating can damage trust. But for some people, disappearing is not a strategy. It is a survival response. Their body is saying, "Hide. Do not be seen like this. Do not let anyone know how bad it is. Do not need too much. Do not become a problem." They are not trying to punish anyone. They're trying not to fall apart in front of anyone. There's often shame underneath this kind of silence. Shame says, "You should be doing better. You should be stronger. You should not need help. You are too much when you struggle." People will leave if they see the real state of you. So they cover their pain with distance. They disappear before anyone can ask too many questions. They hide before anyone can notice the cracks. They step back before they have to admit they're not okay. And this can feel lonely. Because deep down, many of these people do want connection. They want someone to notice. They want someone to care. They want someone to say, "You do not have to explain everything. I'm still here." But at the same time, they are terrified of needing that. They are afraid that if they open the door even a little, everything will come out. The sadness, the exhaustion, the fear, the confusion, the anger they never expressed, the tiredness they kept pretending was normal. So they keep the door closed. They become unavailable because vulnerability feels unsafe. And sometimes they even convince themselves that isolation is easier. They tell themselves, "I just need to get through this alone. I will come back when I am better. I do not want to drag anyone into my problems. I will reconnect when I feel normal again." But healing does not always happen in isolation. Sometimes isolation protects you for a moment. But if you stay there too long, it starts to hurt you. Because being alone with pain can make the pain louder. The mind starts creating stories. Nobody cares. Nobody noticed. Nobody would understand. Everyone has moved on. You're too difficult to love. But those thoughts are not always the truth. Sometimes they are old wounds speaking. Sometimes the part of you that disappears is not trying to destroy your relationships. It is trying to protect you from the pain of being rejected when you are already weak. But protection can become a prison. At some point, disappearing stops keeping you safe and starts keeping you separate. So maybe the work is not to force yourself to become perfectly open. Maybe the work is not to tell everyone everything. Maybe the work is simply learning to send one small signal before you vanish completely. Something like, I am overwhelmed, but I care. I may be slow to reply, but I am not ignoring you. I'm going through something and need some space. I do not have words right now, but I will come back. I am struggling, and I do not want to disappear this time. That one message can become a bridge. Not a full explanation. Not a perfect confession. Just a small bridge back to connection. Because the people who love you do not always need you to be okay. Sometimes they just need to know where you are emotionally. They need to know that your silence is not hatred. That your distance is not rejection. That your disappearance is not the end of the connection. And you deserve to know something too. You do not have to become perfectly healed before you let people care about you. You do not have to wait until you are calm, successful, organized, beautiful, productive, and emotionally clear before you are worthy of being seen. You're allowed to be loved in the middle of the hard part. You are allowed to be supported before you have solved everything. You're allowed to say, I do not know what I need, but I do not want to be alone. Because disappearing may have protected you once. But connection can protect you too. Not every person will understand. Not every person will know how to respond gently. Not every person deserves access to your most vulnerable moments. But someone safe will not punish you for struggling. Someone safe will not make your pain about their inconvenience. Someone safe will not demand a perfect explanation before offering kindness. Someone safe will not need you to perform strength just to deserve care. So if you're someone who disappears when life gets hard, maybe you are not broken. Maybe you learn silence, because silence once felt safer than honesty. Maybe you learned isolation because needing people once brought pain. Maybe you vanish because a younger part of you still believes that struggle must be hidden. But now, you can learn something new. You can learn that being seen while struggling does not always lead to shame. Sometimes it leads to softness. Sometimes it leads to understanding. Sometimes it leads to someone sitting beside you, not asking you to become okay immediately. And maybe healing begins there, not in explaining everything perfectly, but in letting one safe person know, I'm still here. I'm just having a hard time. Because some people do not disappear because they do not care. They disappear because they care so much, and they are afraid their pain will make them too difficult to stay with. But the right people will not need you to disappear to be loved. They will let you be human, even when life gets hard.